Welcome Ultrawide fans, Scott here, and have you been wondering how much you really need to spend to get great performance on your Ultrawide? Well, today we'll be looking at Team Red to see whether the 7900 XT or the 7900 XTX provides the perfect amount of raster performance for your Ultrawide resolution. We'll be testing this Sapphire Pulse 7900 XT and this Power Color Red Devil 7900 XTX across 10 games at 4 different Ultrawide and Super Ultrawide resolutions. And luckily for you, the pricing on both these cards has improved greatly since I last looked at them. Hopefully all the XTing and XTXing I'll be doing won't get too confusing in this review. All testing was done on my test system featuring an AMD R7 5800X 3D CPU with 32GB of 3200MHz CL14 memory running on Windows 11 and using the AMD Adrenalin software 32.2.2. Our first game is Assassin's Creed Valhalla played on its ultra high preset. Here we see both cards performing well. At a 1440p ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX hitting very high refresh rates, coming in 15% faster than the 7900 XT, with the cards getting 125 and 109 FPS averages. The XTX is only 9% faster in the 1% lows. At the 1600p ultra-wide resolution, we see both cards in high refresh rates, with the 7900 XTX 16% faster than the 7900 XT, getting 111 and 96 FPS. The XTX is 8% faster in the 1% lows. Moving to our 1440p Super Ultrawide, we see the 7900 XTX stay in high refresh rates with 13% faster than the 7900 XT, with frame rates at 93 and 82 FPS. The XTX is now 6% faster in the 1% lows. At the pixel dense 5120 by 2160 4K Ultrawide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX drop into smooth refresh rates, 18% faster than the 7900 XT, with refresh rates of 76 and 64 FPS. The XTX has increased to 13% faster at the 1% lows. In Assassin's Creed, we see the 7900 XT delivering all the performance necessary for a good play experience, making the 15% faster performance of the 7900 XTX just a nice to have. Next up we have the rough and rowdy Borderlands 3 played on its badass preset. We see another pretty decent performance out of both cards. At our most popular 3440 by 1440p ultra-wide, we see the 7900 XTX getting very high refresh rates, 22% faster than the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 126 and 104 FPS. The XTX is 29% faster in the 1% lows. Moving up in resolution to the 1600p ultra-wide, we see the 7900 XTX now in high refresh rates, 25% faster than the 7900 XT, with the cards getting 111 and 89 FPS. The XTX is 31% faster in the 1% lows. Looking at our Super Ultrawide, we see the 7900 XTX hanging on to high refresh rates, 27% ahead of the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 95 and 75 FPS, with the 7900 XTX 25% faster for the 1% lows. And lastly, at a 4K Ultrawide, we see the 7900 XTX drop into smooth refresh rates, 28% faster than the 7900 XT, which is now in acceptable range, with the cards delivering 70 and 55 FPS, with the XTX 30% faster in the 1% lows. The 7900 XT provides a nice play experience at all resolutions except for the 4K Ultrawide, where it is delivering just an acceptable average frame rate, while the 7900 XTX is able to stay above 60 even with its 1% lows. For our racing fans, we have Forza Horizon 5 played on its extreme preset. At our 1440p ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX with only an 8% performance advantage over the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 98 and 91 FPS. The XTX is a little bit higher in its 1% low advantage at 17%. Moving to the 1600p ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX stay in high refresh rates, 7% ahead of the 7900 XT, with 93 and 87 FPS. The XTX is 18% ahead for the 1% lows. At the 5120 by 1440p Super Ultrawide resolution, the 7900 XTX drops into smooth range, again 8% ahead of the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 86 and 80 FPS. The XTX is again 17% faster than the 1% lows. And at 4K Ultrawide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX a bit higher, at 12% faster than the 7900 XT, with the cards getting 80 and 71 FPS. The XTX is again 18% faster for the 1% lows. The 7900 XT puts in a strong showing at every resolution, getting near the 7900 XTX's performance. The new action RPG Forspoken is up next, being played on its ultra settings with ray tracing and FSR turned off. At our 1440p ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX delivering smooth frame rates, 19% faster than the 7900 XT, with its frame rate only in acceptable territory, with the cards delivering 71 and 58 FPS. The 7900 XTX is 16% faster in the 1% lows. Moving up to the 1600p ultra-wide, we see the 7900 XTX still in smooth range, 19% faster than the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 63 FPS and 53 FPS. The XTX is 18% faster in the 1% low, with the 7900 XT falling into unacceptable range. Moving to our super ultra-wide resolution, we see that the 7900 XTX falling into acceptable territory, 18% ahead of the 7900 XT, which is now in unacceptable territory, at 52 and 44 FPS. The 7900 XTX is now in unacceptable territory with its 1% lows, still 17% faster than the 1% lows of the XT. At our 4K ultra-wide resolution, even the 7900 XTX drops into unacceptable range, 19% faster than the 7900 XT with a frame rate of 41 and 35 FPS. The XTX is 13% faster for the 1% lows. Forspoken is a tough game to run regardless of the resolution, and as the resolution goes up, the 7900 XT quickly drops to a point where it needs FSR to keep smooth refresh rates. The 7900 XTX holds onto a decent frame rate for a bit longer, but with only 19% performance advantage. It too eventually succumbs at our highest resolution. Next, we venture into the land of robot dinosaurs with Horizon Zero Dawn played on its ultimate quality preset. At the 1440p ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX delivering very high refresh rates, 21% faster than the high refresh rates of the 7900 XT, with the cards getting 140 and 116 FPS. With the XTX actually 3% slower for the 1% lows, it is likely hitting some kind of limit. Moving to 1600p ultra-wide resolutions, we see the 7900 XTX's lead stay 21% faster than the 7900 XT, with refresh rates of 124 and 102 FPS. The XTX now has a 39% 1% low advantage. At our super ultra-wide resolution, the 7900 XTX is still 21% ahead of the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 129 and 107 FPS. The XTX is now 27% ahead in the 1% lows. Finally, at our 4K ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX 23% ahead of the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 81 and 66 FPS. The XTX is now 33% ahead at the 1% low, with the 7900 XT dropping into acceptable frame rates. Here we see another game where the 7900 XT posts respectable FPS all the way down, with the 7900 XTX's real advantage being able to keep its 1% lows above 60 at the 5120 by 2160 resolution. Next up we have Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy played on its Ultra preset. At 3440 by 1440 ultra-wide, we see both cards with very high refresh rates. The 7900 XTX is 15% ahead of the 7900 XT with an average frame rate of 172 and 149 FPS. The XTX has a 14% advantage in the 1% lows. Moving to our 1600p ultra-wide, we see very high refresh rates for both cards. The 7900 XTX is 16% ahead of the 7900 XT with average frame rates of 152 and 131 FPS, and the XTX is 21% ahead in the 1% lows. At our super ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX 21% ahead of the 7900 XT with 131 and 108 FPS. The XTX is 17% ahead in the 1% lows. Lastly, at the 4K ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX in high refresh rates with an increase to 23% faster than the 700 XT, with frame rates of 103 and 84 FPS. The XTX has an equally good 23% 1% low advantage. The 7900 XT managed to get great frame rates at all the way down the resolution stack, even on its 1% lows, relegating the 700 XTX's extra frame rates to an unnecessary luxury. Representing our online shooters, we have Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Extraction played on its Ultra preset, with resolution quality set to fixed 100%. At 1440p ultra-wide resolutions, we see the 7900 XTX hit super high refresh rates, 22% faster than the 7900 XT, with the XTX 18% ahead in the 1% lows. At 3840 by 1600 ultra-wide, the 700 XTX maintains a lead of 22% over the 700 XT, with frame rates of 178 and 146 FPS. The XTX has a 19% advantage for the 1% lows. On our Super Ultrawide, we see the 7900 XTX lead at 24% over the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 152 and 124 FPS. The XTX has 23% faster 1% lows. At the 4K ultra-wide resolution, the 7900 XTX finally drops into high refresh rates, 26% faster than the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 108 and 86 FPS. The XTX is 24% faster in the 1% lows. Again, we see the 7900 XT deliver enough performance to make the 7900 XTX's extra grunt unnecessary. Next up we have the venerable Shadow of the Tomb Raider, played at its highest preset. Here we see another string of very high refresh rate games for the 7900 XT. At 3440 by 1440 we see very high refresh rates for both cards. The 7900 XTX has a modest lead of 9% over the 7900 XT, with refresh rates of 167 and 153 FPS. The XTX has the same 9% lead in the 1% lows. At the 1600p ultra-wide resolution we see more very high refresh rates. The 7900 XTX is now 11% ahead of the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 147 and 132 FPS. The XTX has an 11% advantage for the 1% lows. At our 1440p super ultra-wide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX hang on to very high refresh rates, 14% ahead of the 7900 XT, with refresh rates of 129 and 113 FPS. The XTX has a 14% advantage for the 1% lows. Even on our resolution king, we see both cards keeping everything above 60, with the 7900 XTX 18% faster than the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 94 and 89 FPS. The XTX is 21% faster in the 1% lows. Again, in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the 7900 XT proves to be all the cards you need, keeping even its 1% low above 60 at all resolutions. Now we come to the infamous Cyberpunk 2077, the can-it-play crisis of our time, where we will be testing the Ultra preset with FSR turned off. On our 1440p ultra-wide, we see the 7900 XTX come out of the gates with high refresh rates, 17% faster than the 7900 XT, with an average frame rates of 105 and 89 FPS. The XTX has 26% faster 1% lows. Moving to 1600p ultra-wide, we see the smooth refresh rates for the 7900 XTX, 18% faster than the 7900 XT, with refresh rates of 85 and 71 FPS. The XTX was 21% faster in the 1% lows. And adding more pixels gets us to our super ultra-wide resolution, where we see both cards stay in smooth gameplay range, with the 7900 XTX 16% faster than the 7900 XT, with refresh rates of 74 and 64 FPS. The XTX is 18% faster in the 1% lows. At our max resolution of 5120 by 2160 4K ultra-wide, we see even the mighty 7900 XTX drop into acceptable range, with a much higher 34% advantage over the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 58 and 43 FPS. The XTX is a fairly significant 31% faster in the 1% lows. The 7900 XT hangs in there at 3 lower resolutions, but the game is clear case where the 7900 XTX extra power is the difference between playable and not at our 4K ultra-wide resolution. Finally, we have our last game, and it's for our strategy buffs. It's Total War Warhammer III played on its Ultra preset using battle simulation. At our 1440p ultra-wide, we see the 7900 XTX 18% faster than 7900 XT, with frame rates of 99 and 84 FPS. The XTX is a pretty significant 30% faster in the 1% lows. At 3840 by 1600, we see both cards in smooth territory. The 7900 XTX is 19% faster than the 7900 XT, with refresh rates of 85 and 71 FPS. The XTX is a significantly higher 31% in the 1% low advantage. For our 1440p super ultra-wide resolution, we see both cards stay in smooth refresh rates, with the 7900 XTX 20% faster than the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 74 and 62 FPS. The XTX has a 34% advantage in the 1% lows. And our final resolution on our final game, the 4K ultra-wide sees the 7900 XTX 19% faster than the 7900 XT, with frame rates of 54 and 45 FPS. The XTX is a much closer 16% ahead in the 1% lows. Again, we see a common through line in this testing, where the 7900 XT performs admirably in 3 out of the 4 resolutions, but can't keep up with the 4K ultra-wide, where you need the extra grunt of the 7900 XTX to be able to manage a decent frame rate. Since this game doesn't have upscaling, this will be crucial. Before we jump into the 10 game averages, if you enjoyed Ultrawide based content and want to see more of it, please subscribe to this channel. It will help us get monetized so I can keep buying more GPUs to review for you fine folk. Now, let's round everything up and see what we have. For our 3440 by 1440 Ultrawide, we see the 7900 XTX delivering a very high 131 FPS average to the high 113 FPS average of the 7900 XT. The XTX has a 17% lead for the average and a 16% lead for the 1% lows. When we take a look at the per game results, we see one super high refresh rate game for the 7900 XTX and none for the 7900 XT. The 7900 XTX has another 5 games and very high refresh rates to the 3 games for the 7900 XT. We see 3 high refresh rate gains for the 7900 XTX and 4 for the 7900 XT, and a single game lands in smooth range for the 7900 XTX, while the 7900 XT gets 3 games in smooth range. When we look at the 1% lows for the 7900 XTX, we see all but one game is above 60, and the final game is still getting acceptable 1% lows, making the 7900 XTX an easy recommendation for gamers at this resolution, without quite making it to overkill territory. When we look at the 7900 XT's 1% lows, we see it also gets all but one game above 60, with one in acceptable range, making the 7900 XT an easy recommendation, and a great choice if you want to save some money. For our 3840 by 1600 Ultrawide, we see more high refresh rate averages of 115 FPS for the 7900 XTX and 98 FPS for the 7900 XT. The 7900 XTX has another 17% advantage for the average, and a higher 21% advantage for the 1% low. When we take a look at the per game results, we see 4 very high refresh rate results for the 7900 XTX and 3 for the 7900 XT, with 3 high refresh rate games for the XTX and 2 for the XT. We have 3 smooth games for the 7900 XTX, and for the 7900 XT, it has 4 smooth games and 1 acceptable game. Not much has changed performance bucket-wise from the previous resolution, aside from the 7900 XTX not being able to hang on to its super high refresh rates. When we look at the 1% lows for the 7900 XTX, we again see 9 games above 60 and 1 in acceptable range, making the 7900 XTX a great pick for this resolution. And taking a look at the 7900 XT's 1% low results, we see 7 games above 60, 2 in acceptable range, and only 1 game that barely slips into unacceptable range. With only minor FPS loss, FSR quality will be able to get this game back into a fine playable state. The 7900 XT is still a good pick and a recommendation for this resolution. At 5120 by 1440 Super Ultrawide, we see the 7900 XTX stay in high refresh rates with 102 FPS, while the 7900 XT is now in smooth range with 86 FPS. The 7900 XTX is 19% faster for the average and 20% faster for the 1% low. When we look at the individual game level, we see the 4 very high refresh rate games for the 7900 XTX, but only a single very high refresh rate game for the 7900 XT. The 7900 XTX sees 2 high refresh rate games, with the 7900 XT getting 3. The XTX has 3 smooth games, with the XT getting 5. The 7900 XTX sees its first acceptable game, compared to the 1 unacceptable games for the 7900 XT. When looking at the 1% lows for the 7900 XTX, we see 8 of the 10 games above 60, with 1 in acceptable range and 1 unacceptable range. With a little FSR quality, Forspoken will be back in a fine state, making the 7900 XTX a great card for this resolution. And looking at the 7900 XT's results, we see 6 out of the 10 games above 60, and 3 games in acceptable range and 1 in unacceptable range. Our 1 unacceptable game is still able to be recovered back to 60 FPS averages, and acceptable 1% lows with FSR quality, so the 7900 XT can still be recommended for this resolution. But this is the first resolution where I would have you seriously consider upgrading to the XTX. At our final 5120 by 2160 Ultrawide resolution, we see the 7900 XTX now at smooth refresh rates, with a 77 FPS average, with the 7900 XT delivering 63 FPS averages. The 7900 XTX is 22% faster for the average and 23% faster for the 1% low, with the 7900 XT now falling into acceptable range for the 1% low. When we look at the individual game level, we see the 7900 XTX deliver 3 games in high refresh rates, while the 7900 XT gets none. The 7900 XTX gets 4 games in smooth refresh rates to the 6 games of the 7900 XT, and 2 games are in acceptable range for both the 700 XTX and the 700 XT, and 1 game falls into unacceptable for the XTX, while the XT sees 2 games in unacceptable range. When we look at the 1% lows of the 7900 XTX, we see 6 games stay above 60, 3 land in acceptable range, and still only 1 in unacceptable range. FSR quality is enough to get Forspoken back up to 60 FPS, making the 7900 XTX a recommended card at this resolution. And when we look at the 7900 XT's 1% lows, we see the 3 games above 60, 4 games in acceptable range, and 3 in unacceptable range. It is clear that this card is not the best choice for this resolution, with FSR quality no longer able to save the lowest games. But it is still a passable experience if you are accepting of the fact that you may need to use FSR or lower settings on nearly half of the games you play. When we look at the price to performance based on the MSRP of these two cards, we see the 7900 XT is not in a good place, with worse price to performance than the 7900 XTX. But as I mentioned in the intro, pricing is in a much better spot for both of these cards than it was even a month ago, with the 7900 XT now able to be found well under its MSRP, with multiple cards available for $830, making it now the best price to performance card available in the current generation, and the 7900 XTX now available at its MSRP. When we look with this new pricing, we see the 7900 XT has a slight price to performance advantage at the 3 lower resolutions, with the XTX squeaking ahead on our 4K ultrawide. It seems the market has finally corrected for the true relative value of these cards, with the 7900 XT now coming in at a slightly better price to performance than 7900 XTX at all resolutions except for our 4K ultrawide. Since these cards are now functionally the same price to performance, we can do all of our recommendations based just on their raster performance. At the 3440 by 1440 and the 3840 by 1600 ultrawide resolutions, we see the 7900 XT provide all the performance you need for a great, smooth gaming experience without even needing to touch the FSR toggle, leaving that as your secret weapon for whenever you feel like anything's getting you in the slightest bit slow. Where the 7900 XTX is so fast that FSR is possibly only going to benefit you at the lower half of the stack. Now, that said, buying the XTX for this resolution is not a bad idea, but you really need to ask yourself, do you really need all that extra gravy? Moving to our 2 higher resolutions of 5120 by 1440 and 5120 by 2160, we see the 7900 XT slow down enough that investing in the 7900 XTX at this resolution would be a wise investment in future-proofing. And with both cards coming in with the same price to performance, it's a very easy justification to make. Now, with that said, the 7900 XT never falls apart like we see the 4070 Ti do at this resolution. So, if you can't afford the XTX, a liberal application of FSR will probably get you the great, smooth gaming experience you're after. So there you have it, with both cards providing the same price to performance. I would pick the 7900 XTX, especially if you're playing at our 2 higher resolutions. But if you can't afford it, the 7900 XT is now the best deal of this generation. And to keep your wallet happy, I have linked the 2 cheapest versions of each of these cards below in the description. Thanks for watching. If you love Ultrawide content, please like and subscribe to keep getting even more great Ultrawide videos. And it will help this channel get monetized, which means I can buy even more GPUs to test for you fine folk. Now, if you want to see both of these cards tested against their Team Green counterparts, please check out these videos here. Thank you for watching and have a great day.